On a warm summer night in June 1912, the sleepy, picturesque town of Villisca, Iowa, was forever scarred by an act of unimaginable brutality. In a quiet, unassuming home, an entire family and 2 visiting children were systematically murdered in their beds. What transpired behind the drawn blinds of the Moore house remains one of America's oldest, most chilling and utterly baffling unsolved mysteries. This isn't just a tale of murder. It's a deep dive into a crime scene filled with perplexing clues, elusive suspects, and a terrifying killer who vanished into the night, leaving behind only questions and a legacy of dread. To truly grasp the horror, we must first know the victims. The Moore family was a cornerstone of the Villisca community. Josiah B. Moore, 43, was a respected businessman, running a successful hardware store and active in local politics. His wife, Sarah Montgomery Moore, 39, was a devoted mother and homemaker. Together, they had 4 children: Herman, 11, Catherine, 10, Boyd, 7, and Paul, 5. They were a typical, prosperous, and well-regarded family in rural Iowa. On the evening of June 9, 1912, the Moore household had 2 additional occupants, Lena Stillinger, 12, and her sister Ina Stillinger, 8. They were friends of Catherine Moore and had been invited for a sleepover, a common and joyous occurrence in small-town life. Their presence added another layer of tragedy to an already unthinkable crime. This was a family living a normal life, utterly unprepared for the nightmare that was about to descend upon them. The last day of the Moore family's lives began and unfolded like any other typical Sunday in early 20th century America. It was a day centered around community, church, and simple pleasures. In the morning, the entire Moore family, including the Stillinger sisters, attended a Children's Day program at the local Presbyterian church. Josiah Moore was particularly involved, helping to organize the event. After the service, the children returned home, excited and full of the day's activities. The Stillinger girls were expected to go home after the program, but Catherine Moore convinced their parents to let them stay for a sleepover, a decision that would seal their tragic fate. The family, with their 2 young guests, spent the evening at home. The children played, dinner was served, and eventually, as dusk settled over Villisca, the household prepared for bed. Neighbors reported seeing the lights on in the Moore house later than usual that evening, perhaps around 10 p.m., before they finally went dark. No one saw anything amiss, no strange vehicles, no suspicious individuals. The quiet of the small town descended, unbroken, or so it seemed. Monday morning, June 10th, brought an unsettling quiet to the Moore property. For a family of 6 vibrant individuals plus 2 guests, the silence was conspicuous. Mrs. Montgomery, a neighbor and the mother of Sarah Moore, noticed that her daughter had not come out to hang laundry. The chickens on the Moore farm were still locked in their coops, a task normally completed by Josiah early in the morning. The cows, usually milked by this time, were lowing in the barn, clearly distressed and unmilked. This was highly uncharacteristic for the diligent Josiah Moore. Most alarming, young Catherine, Herman, and the Stillinger girls were absent from school. The local school teacher, Miss Nell E. Kennedy, became concerned. She tried calling the Moore house multiple times, but there was no answer. Growing increasingly worried, Mrs. Montgomery sent her brother-in-law, Ross Moore, to check on the family. Ross arrived at the house around 7:00 a.m., but found all the doors locked. He knocked repeatedly, called out, but received no reply. This was deeply concerning. Ross Moore, now convinced something was terribly wrong, retrieved the spare key to the house. Joined by neighbors, including a blacksmith named Arthur Van Gilder, he entered the home around 10 a.m. The first thing they noticed was an unsettling silence, followed by the faint smell of stale blood. In the downstairs parlor, they found the first bodies, Josiah Moore and Sarah Moore, brutally murdered in their beds. Their faces were covered by sheets. The immediate terror of the scene was overwhelming. The horrified men rushed to alert the authorities, and Sheriff Frank F. Jones was quickly on the scene. As the investigation began, the full extent of the tragedy became apparent. Upstairs, in one bedroom, they found the bodies of Herman, Catherine, Boyd, and Paul Moore, each killed in their beds. Their faces were also covered. In another bedroom, the bodies of Lena and Ina Stillinger were discovered, also murdered in their beds, their faces covered. Lena was found lying across her sister, her nightgown pushed up. All 8 victims had been killed with an axe, delivered with terrifying force. The scene was one of utter devastation and chilling uniformity. The small town of Villisca, once peaceful, was now the site of an unimaginable nightmare. The immediate aftermath of the discovery was chaotic. In the early 20th century, forensic science was rudimentary, and proper crime scene preservation was not standard practice. Hundreds of curious townspeople, journalists, and amateur sleuths descended upon the house, trampling over potential evidence. Fingers, hands, and feet touched virtually every surface. Sheriff Frank F. Jones, though a well-meaning local, lacked the experience for a crime of this magnitude. He allowed broad access to the scene, further compromising potential clues. The initial efforts focused on the immediate obvious details: the bodies, the weapon, and the general layout. Key observations from the initial investigation: the murder weapon, an axe, was found propped against a wall in the children's downstairs bedroom. It belonged to Josiah Moore. All curtains in the house had been drawn or covered. Every mirror in the house was covered with cloths or garments. 2 kerosene lamps were found, one in the boys' bedroom and one in the Stillinger girls' room, both missing their chimneys and covered. This suggested the killer wanted to work in darkness or low light. A piece of bacon was found on a plate in the kitchen, uneaten, next to a bowl of water. The killer had apparently locked all the doors and windows from the inside upon leaving, possibly using a skeleton key. The clothes of the victims had been placed neatly on chairs at the foot of their beds. No valuables of any significant amount appeared to have been taken, ruling out simple robbery as a motive. These details painted a picture not of a frantic, spontaneous crime, but of a methodical, calculated, and deeply disturbing act. The bizarre details of the Villisca murders were not just incidental. They hinted at a chilling pattern and a disturbed mind. Covered faces. Every victim's face was covered with a sheet, blanket, or garment after death. This highly unusual action suggested either a desire by the killer to avoid looking at their victims, a ritualistic element, or an attempt to delay discovery by making it seem as though the family was just sleeping. The lamps and mirrors. The removal of lamp chimneys and covering of mirrors speaks to a killer who wanted to operate in darkness and avoid seeing their own reflection or the reflections of their victims. This suggests a methodical approach and a desire for absolute obscurity. The axe. The use of the family's own axe indicated either opportunistic violence by someone who found it, or an intimate knowledge of the property by someone who knew where to find such a tool. The sheer force used on some victims was extreme, going beyond what was necessary to kill. The bacon. A piece of bacon, uneaten, left on a plate in the kitchen, next to a bowl of water. This is an odd detail. Did the killer attempt to eat after the murders? Was it a bizarre calling card? Or simply a detail of the previous day's activities, left untouched by the killer? Locked doors and windows. The killer exited the house and locked everything from the inside, suggesting they used the missing keys or a special key. This added to the eerie sense of the killer's control and how they seemingly vanished. Lena Stillinger's position, the fact that Lena was found lying across her sister Ina, with her nightgown pushed up, initially led some to suspect sexual assault. However, medical examinations found no evidence of it. This detail remains perplexing. Was it due to a struggle or something else entirely? Lack of robbery, the absence of anything valuable being stolen, was a major point. This was not a crime of profit, but of something far more sinister and personal, or perhaps random, but with a specific ritual. These specific elements have fueled decades of speculation and frustration, as no single motive or suspect ever fit all the pieces. Over the years, a multitude of suspects emerged, each with their own peculiar connections to the case, but none ever led to a conviction. Frank F. Jones, the local state senator and rival businessman of Josiah Moore. Josiah had recently been in a dispute with Jones over a business deal. Jones's name came up as a potential suspect, and he was known to be a powerful, influential figure in town. His connection was primarily a motive of animosity rather than direct evidence. Reverend George Kelly, perhaps the most famous suspect. He was an English traveling minister who was in Villisca the night of the murders. He later confessed to the crimes multiple times but provided inconsistent details, claiming he was compelled by God to kill. He was a highly unreliable and peculiar individual who was eventually tried and acquitted due to lack of evidence and the unreliability of his confessions. He matched the general description of a serial killer, often targeting entire families. Henry Moore, not related to the victims, but a known serial killer active around that time. He used an axe as his weapon and committed similar family murders across the Midwest Colorado and Kansas. Detectives connected him to the Villisca case, but he was eventually incarcerated for other crimes and never definitively linked to Villisca. William Mansfield, another serial killer suspect, a professional gambler and axe murderer known for similar crimes in other states. He was later acquitted of another similar axe murder. There were theories that he was involved, but no conclusive proof. Andrew Sawyer, an alleged serial killer who was reported to have confessed to the Villisca murders and similar crimes, but the information was unverified and he was later deemed mentally unstable. Local drifters or an unknown killer is the most likely scenario, given the lack of a specific motive and the systematic nature of the crime. The murderer could have been a transient, a drifter who moved through small towns, committing similar crimes. The lack of eyewitnesses and the efficiency of the crime suggests someone who was practiced or extremely careful. The phantom serial killer, the method, weapon, and the ritualistic covering of faces and mirrors bore strong resemblances to other unsolved axe murders in Iowa, Kansas, and Colorado around the same time. This led to theories of a single highly dangerous serial killer moving across the region, a shadow figure who brought terror to otherwise peaceful communities. Despite countless investigations, grand jury hearings, and exhaustive efforts by law enforcement and private detectives, no one was ever charged or convicted for the Villisca Axe Murders. The case remains officially open. The Villisca Axe Murders stand as a chilling testament to the elusive nature of some crimes. It's a case without a clear motive, a known perpetrator, or any logical explanation for the strange events at the crime scene. The systematic brutality, the killer's chilling composure in staying on the property, and the complete lack of a forensic trail continued to baffle experts and terrify true crime enthusiasts. The house itself, now a popular paranormal investigation site, is believed by many to be haunted by the spirits of the victims, their tormented energy trapped in the place of their violent end. It serves as a tangible reminder of the terror that descended on Villisca over a century ago. What truly happened on that horrifying night in June 1912? Was it a calculated act of revenge by a local, a random strike by a transient psychopath, or the work of a phantom serial killer whose trail disappeared with the changing seasons? The victims, Josiah, Sarah, Herman, Catherine, Boyd, Paul, Lena, and Ina, never found justice. And the town of Villisca, forever marked by this tragedy, lives with an unresolved nightmare, a cold case frozen in time, forever whispering its terrible secrets.